Okay, Avik, going live. Hello and good evening from Decode Strategy events live from Singapore. We have a very special speaker today, and I'm extremely humbled to have him accept our invitation and come for this talk. Before I move on, just a couple of quick details and a few hygiene things, and then I'll pass it on to Avik, who is our speaker for today, and then we will let him talk for approximately 30-35 minutes. And after that, if there are any questions that we have, we will take on a couple of questions. So, a couple of things. I just wanted to let you know a little bit about the lineup of the speakers that we have. Today we have Avik, who's joining us, and we are very thankful for that. Next weekend we have another interesting session, and we have Sashi, who will be joining us live from New York. And Sashi is going to talk to us about gaming. And he's been a gamer all his life, and now he's someone who is into marketing, and how he brings the two worlds together. And he's worked on a lot of brands and helped them out bring the two worlds together. So he'll be talking about his experiences. The week after that, the Saturday after that, we have Dan White, who will be joining us from London. And Dan became famous a while ago when he released his book, the Smart Marketing book. And his book contains all the marketing frameworks that he's learned throughout his career. And he's also an illustrator himself, and therefore he's put a self-illustration of his face, as you can see on the event page. And followed by that, we'll be talking with Dilip Shankar. And Dilip is one of the co-founders of Center of Gravity Consulting. I have worked very closely with Center of Gravity for a couple of my clients. And they are the absolute pioneers when it comes to human-centered design. And there is something very special that they bring to the table every time I have worked with them. So a very interesting lineup of speakers. So I strongly recommend that you follow the Decode Strategy Labs LinkedIn page for being informed, for staying informed and up to date with the future events which are coming up. I just wanted to briefly talk about Avik before I pass it on to him. Avik has been industry veteran. He's been working for almost 22 years plus. And when you look at his career on that spectrum, you see he's spent a tremendous amount of time in the automotive and oil and gas side of things, working with Maruti Suzuki, Caltex, Exxon, Apollo Tyres, PSA, Peugeot, Citroen, and Volkswagen, where he's headed the global brand consulting firm Saffron Brand Consultants in India and South Asia for a year. So Avik has co-founded a brand strategy consultancy known as Expereal, and he believes in transforming brands to transform business, and likes to sketch, follow trivia, listen to music, and write on subjects from automotive to brand strategy and to social and economic issues. So on that note, I would love to welcome Avik to this live stream. And Avik, very happy to have you here. And please, if I would suggest that if you can, I've spoken about a little bit of the professional journey as such, but I think if you could give us a very quick personal account of your journey before you move on to the topic. So all yours, Avik.
Thank you very much, Rahul. Thank you to you and to the Decode team for having me here. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good late evening to all of you who've taken time out, to to sit through as I as I share my story about the brand building mistakes that I've made and I've learned from in my journey. So my personal journey, yes, I originate from Kolkata, which is on the eastern side of India. I'm a Bengali. I'm the son of a bureaucrat and of an initially a homemaker and then an entrepreneur. So my father's a retired bureaucrat. My mother still continues to be an entrepreneur. She keeps doing a lot of social projects. I'm single, so I live with my parents. I'm still dependent on them, as I keep telling them. And we live in Gurgaon, which is a satellite city of Delhi, which is the capital of India. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, apart from work, I spend a lot of time, listening to music, watching movies, reading up a lot of stuff, all kinds of stuff. Except for I don't read too much of fiction, and
Awesome.
and well, that's about me. That's about me. Uh, okay, so yes, I mean
Awesome.
uh, so when Rahul came to me with the subject, I was actually elated because this is the first time somebody was actually going to invest time in me to recount the mistakes I've made, okay, in my professional journey. And I initially thought that should I put things down on a PowerPoint, but then I said, what the hell? I mean, that is the most structured thing that you can do, and it is so boring. And PowerPoints are boring. That's what I really believe. And the one learning that I have had over my 30 plus years of working now is it's far more powerful, it's far more effective, to put your message down on a nice note, a Word document, than to actually put it down on a PowerPoint presentation. Because the PowerPoint presentation, however good the pictorials and the words that you use, you really can't put too much of emotion into it. So I decided, and I was thinking as to where to start from. Should I start from the beginning, when I started my career in 1991 in Maruti Udyog, which is now Maruti Suzuki, or should I start from the end? Because in my journey, I've actually made more mistakes as I've grown more senior. So the bigger mistakes I've made towards the end of my journey, uh, and the smaller mistakes were almost in the beginning. I guess it's more of an outcome of the more senior you are, you tend to hold on much more to the brand. I mean, you're far more possessive, and that is the biggest fault, and that is a huge weakness. I don't know why it happens to others, but to me, it happened more out of anxiety. More out of the anxiety of letting go, more of almost a kind of an insecurity of possibly not being able to really express too well and effectively about the brand. And before I teamed up with two of my friends and formed this brand consulting firm called Expereal. I was the head of marketing, product planning, and PR for Volkswagen in India. And I think that is where I actually made my biggest mistake in my role as someone who was entrusted with the task of building the Volkswagen brand. The brand had been introduced in the year 2008, 2009. Um, Global brand, a brand that everybody knows of, and then I took on the role from my predecessor, who went back to Germany. The biggest mistake I actually made about the Volkswagen brand in India was that I did not actually go out and communicate well enough about the Volkswagen story. And that is what I think was most required for actually establishing the brand in its next phase from pure introduction. people knew of Volkswagen. People did not know about Volkswagen. And I think even today, okay, most Indians don't know about Volkswagen because somewhere, starting with me, I can admit is that we somewhere just took it for granted that your consumer actually knows about you, right? Which is not the case. Consumers know about the Beetle, yes. Consumers know about you because they see you when they move out of India and they see you in other countries. But consumers just know of you. When you ask people that do you know of Volkswagen, you will have a huge recall. Do you know about Volkswagen? You won't. So that was my first mistake, or let's say that was my biggest mistake, right? Towards the end of my life, and to me, that is my biggest learning. And I brought that learning into when we formed Expereal, which is the importance of actually telling stories to people, because as human beings, we love stories, and we associate with the stories that relate to us, and we listen to the other stories. They may not relate to us, but at least we know the story, or we know the gist of the story. So to me, let's say my biggest mistake was as a brand builder or as a brand nurturer is the lack of the ability to tell a good story, and the good story about Volkswagen. And one may say that after having worked in the industry for so many years, how did you end up making this kind of a fundamental mistake? Um, well, as I said, I mean, you do end up making very, very fundamental mistakes, even at even when you are very, very rich with experience, and maybe it comes as an outcome of a bit of overconfidence. Maybe it comes as an outcome of a bit of arrogance, but that was it. So that was my biggest mistake, and my biggest learning is that brand building, brand nurturing, is primarily about sharing good stories with people and thereby building relationships. If I go back, the other mistake I made, possibly right through my career, and I realized that much later. I don't know whether to call it a mistake, but because I did it consciously, was to be a good brand marketer or to be a good brand builder, one needs to have multifunctional experiences. And I somehow I desisted from actually doing that. There was a point of time in my career when I was in Maruti Udyog, my second stint in Maruti Udyog, which was then Maruti Suzuki. And I was told by the CEO that I should get into a role outside of marketing and product planning and the corporate brand. And I just moved back. I got into my shell because at that point of time I was convinced that if you are that I wanted to be a specialist and I wanted to continue in that particular field. So if an automobile designer continues to be an automobile designer his or her entire life, if an automobile engineer can continue to be an automobile engineer his or her entire life, why can't a marketing and a brand person continue to be that his or her entire life? The realization came a bit late upon me much after I left Maruti, that it is the function actually decides how open or how focused you need to be. And to be a brand marketer, to be a brand builder, to be a brand nurturer, I am now convinced that you need to have multiple functional experiences for you to be a better brand builder and a better brand nurturer. So that was the other big mistake I made in my professional life, and I made it possibly all through. Very early on, in fact, not very, very early on, it was when I used to work in this company called IBP Caltex, which was a joint venture of IBP, which is Indo-Burma Petroleum, now a part of Indian Oil, and Caltex, which itself is a joint venture of Chevron and Texaco. Okay, I again, it was almost like a startup of today. This was way back in 1994, and I was brought in for the role of marketing, and I was told that we need to build the Caltex brand. Um, and I made the classic mistake that brand building is basically advertising. Okay, that's the other big learning that I've had from the mistakes I've made, that brand building or brand nurturing is much bigger than advertising, and much bigger than just changing identity, changing your logo, and putting it up all over the place. That's a fundamental. That's a core of brand management. But I did make those mistakes. So in Caltex, I realized later that I should have put much more focus on actually building the Caltex brand, okay, and making that more, and building awareness about the brand than just going about advertising. Because what was required at that point of time was a greater focus on building the network, on building the distribution, and also reaching out to customers in a much more direct manner. And advertising at that point of time for a brand might not actually be the only solution to brand building. Talking about foreign brands, another mistake I remember I made, and we again, and I think many of us do fall into the trap, is that whenever we work with a foreign brand, we almost equate foreign to being premium. So whenever you have any foreign brand in the country, in India, so it's always positioned as, because it's come from outside, and whatever be its country of origin, therefore it has to be better than an Indian brand in the market. And therefore there's again, there's this inverse fascination of Indian brands, whatever category they may be in, whatever price point they may be in wanting to be premium, which I find in retrospect, very, 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 very interesting. So I remember when I was in Mobil, which later became ExxonMobil in India. So it was like I almost took it for granted, and that was the first time when I was specifically put on the task of building the Mobil brand in the country. In the initial phase, for me, the first, uh, the instinct was to say, okay, so Mobil is a premium brand, right? Without even telling people as to why Mobil is premium, without even explaining to people as to how the product is different, as well as it is better suited to Indian conditions. But just because it was Mobil, just because it was American, just because it was into Formula One, therefore it had to be premium. And I went on that path for some time. But then thankfully, the people around me, which were more of, the network partners, the distributors, the small shops through which actually at the end of the day a 20-liter a bucket of oil is sold to a truck driver. They came across and they told me that anything that comes from outside is not premium, and being premium is a desired statement from a customer. Being premium cannot be a statement that a brand marketer makes, to people. It's almost like saying, the stand-up comedy guy getting on stage and saying, "See how funny I am." I mean, that's for the recipient to respond as to how funny are you, or how funny you're not. And that is totally an outcome of the stories I share and the jokes I crack, okay, and the kind of ambience I build for the people around me. So yes, so quite early on in my life, I did make that mistake of trying to push, um, needlessly trying to push Mobil as a premium brand in the country, whereas I should have actually focused much more, okay, on going to the ground level, Okay, working more on the B2B aspect of the business, right, and getting my communication right there, and building the brand more through word of mouth and as a response from the customers, than me as a brand manager trying to force fit it, okay, into the marketplace. So that was again to me, a very very important learning as a brand marketer, and as a brand manager. uh, Another interesting example I want to share with you about, about a mistake, or let's say, sets of mistakes that I made was in my second stint in Maruti, where there was this, when you're in the automobile industry, there is this intense fascination of, holding up the product as the hero, and that happens even today. If you see most of, automobile industry communication, whatever be the brand, there are very few brands that actually go beyond just the mere product, and they go out and actually share bigger stories of the people around the products, the ecosystem around the products, than just the product by itself. And this is something which, when I had rejoined Maruti and has to work on certain product brands, specifically, the Zen, and the Esteem, and the Baleno. That time Baleno used to actually be a sedan, not like the Baleno now, which is a hatchback. Is I got very interesting feedback internally, from my colleagues from the engineering function, that, you guys go talking a lot about just the product because you think that your brands are the products. Have you ever realized, or have you ever thought or given a thought to the fact that, your brand is actually made up of the people behind the products? And that was very important learning for me, because that almost, broke a certain stereotype. And it was difficult to come out of that trap, especially in an industry where, the entire brand is built on the product story. And we realized that for Maruti as an organization, I was taught by my own colleagues and my own seniors in the organization that you need to better focus on the people, because at the end of the day, every product might not succeed to build the larger brand, which is the Maruti Suzuki brand. But as long as the people behind the products, okay, they are they come across as being sincere, they come across as being committed, they come across as being, wedded to the cause. And Maruti's cause definitely is democratizing mobility in India. Okay, the consumer may actually excuse you and pardon you for one or two product failures, but they will never, completely shun you as a brand, and that actually makes a brand far more sustainable. So that was huge learning for me. That was massive learning for me, because, it helped me actually get over my fascination of just talking about products as if they were all that encompassed in building a certain brand. Another important, another mistake and thereby learning is this was again, and this was actually when I used to work for Apollo Tires. And um, and and the mistake was that, you think that, when you make one big brand, when you undertake one big brand initiative, or when you undertake one big brand launch, or when you make one big brand announcement, that is good enough to sustain the brand for a certain long period of time, and you tend to rest. Um, And I remember, because there was a point of time in my career in Apollo when I was entrusted with the task of building the brand globally, because the brand was going globally, more so in Europe. And I made the classic mistake of going in for big plans, grandiose plans, and believing in that, if you make one big announcement or you do one big product launch, you can actually rest on it, and then it'll last you, or there will be a rub off over the next 6 to 8 months before you do another big spurt. I realized it doesn't actually work like that. Somewhere, maybe we Indians are also used to this entire concept of you know a big celebration or a big festivity, therefore a big show of fireworks, and then taking it easy over the next 6 to 8 months before the next show of fireworks. And whereas one important learning that I got from there was, um, success actually comes through small incremental steps that a brand takes. Need not always do big things at any point of time. You can continue to keep doing smaller things over a longer period of time. That will help you engage with your customers far better. That will help you engage with all stakeholders far better. That will also help you involve the internal team much more into the journey of the brand. And I'm reminded of a statement that was once made to me by the famous Mr. Shonu Sen, who used to be the director on Hindustan Lever, now Unilever. Mr. Sen had once told me that the brand is a wasting asset, and that stuck in my mind. He said, if you think that you're doing one big thing for the brand, making one product launch, making one big announcement is enough, okay, please remember that with each experience that a customer has with a brand, and any brand, the brand's value actually keeps depreciating. Like we say in the automobile industry, the moment a car actually steps out of the showroom, the car's value starts depreciating. It is the same with a brand. Okay. Therefore, if you want to keep the value of the brand the same as it was last year, you need to keep taking incremental steps. The mistake I made, and I was corrected again by my team members. And there were specifically two team members of mine in Apollo who came back to me and told me, boss, I think we're playing the wrong game, right? We are allowing too much time, too much, a very very long gap between our so-called big, initiatives. I think it'll be a better idea if we can actually make much smaller initiatives, incremental initiatives, better engagement, okay, more long-term presence in the marketplace, continued presence in the marketplace, which will actually help us establish the Apollo brand much better, in markets like Germany, in markets like France, Italy, the UK, and so on. So that to me was another mistake I made, and I learned from my team members. Uh, some big takeaways for me is this word called a brand manager is a bit of a misnomer, because you don't really manage the brand, you only nurture it. Okay. You've been entrusted the task to nurture the brand by actually the man and the woman in the street who actually own the brand, because they own the brand, they are experiencing it, right? And they've entrusted upon you the task to nurture it for them. So, the quicker you actually shed yourself of all this ego and these robes of grandeur, the better. I don't think I could do it right away in the beginning. It took me some time, took me some hits. I did make my mistakes, When I started my career in Maruti, and then I moved on to the oil industry, and I learned that at the end of the day, you can't be possessive about the brand, because your role is that of a nurturer, your role is that of a facilitator, your role is that of ensuring that the man and the woman on the street, they keep getting the same promise delivered consistently over a period of time. The promise of that experience has to be delivered consistently over a period of time, and that is your role, right? You are not the owner, you are not the manager, you are not even the builder, right? You're purely the nurturer. And that to me has been, again, a very important learning, over the 20 plus years that I have actually worked with some really, really interesting brands. um, so I guess, from my end, this is what I wanted to share with all of you, some instances of the mistakes that I've made, as a brand nurturer. As I said, I've actually, rightly or wrongly, made the bigger mistakes as I've actually moved on in life, possibly because of insecurities, possibly because of anxieties, of just letting things go. The loss of control as you grow senior, I've realized, is one of the biggest things that actually eats into you and kills you. But if you can actually just let things go, just let things be owned by the people who are supposed to own them, I guess that is the best way. And as long as you realize that, it's the people that matter, not just the products or the solutions. And a brand is much beyond advertising and the logo change and identity change. I guess it really helps you in your life in the long run. The last thing I want to say also is, I used to suffer from this complex earlier, that the sales guys, and I guess I'm back on again.
Yes, you're live again.
Yeah. Okay. So I used to suffer from this complex, that the salesperson and the finance person, I mean, what do they really understand about a brand, right? And that is the domain of the marketers, that is the domain of the experts. So they should really not be messing around with us. There was a bit of disdain, there was a bit of, a feeling of superiority, which very, very quickly got dispelled, the moment you realized that, there is nothing which actually cannot be measured in this life. And therefore, whatever we do for nurturing the brand, whatever we do for establishing the brand, whatever we do for the evolution of the brand, all that can actually be measured. Today, measurement tools have become much better, and therefore, measurement of everything that we do, is available, and that should actually be the parameter, that should actually be the barometer by which we should actually be judged on what we do. So I guess I've rambled along for quite some time. Over to you, Rahul.
Thanks, Avik. Thanks a ton. I think I will just like to kind of ask a probe question to the very last point that you made, and also I would like to apologize to the viewers for a little bit of technical glitch, as in these things happen. But despite that, we have Avik back, and my question to you, Avik, is coming from the last thing that you spoke about in terms of measurements, and how you connected it to not having the airs when you are in the marketing role. So what's that one measure that
Rahul, I can't hear you very clearly.
so my question is, what's
Can,
that
can, you,
one
can you just repeat?
yeah So my question is, what's that one measure that you think is most important for you when you're trying to measure the brand?
I'm still losing you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we'll move on to some of the viewer questions, and then I'll come back to my questions later. Uh, Avik, are you able to hear me?
The voice is very broken.
Okay. So
Can you hear me clearly?
yes, you are absolutely clear. I will pop a few questions from the audience on your screen. I think we've lost Avik again. Um, so what I'll do is probably I have all the questions over here. I will ask Avik to provide the answers to the questions, and we will post them on the LinkedIn event page after this event. And on this note, I just wanted to thank every single one of you who's joined us. I think we have over 430 people from 30 different countries who have joined this broadcast. I'm extremely sorry about the technical glitches. Completely unexpected. We tested it before and there was absolutely nothing wrong. But thank you for being there. Thank you for taking the time. And I will see you in the live stream next weekend. And have a good evening, have a good morning, have a good day, and enjoy your weekend. Thanks a ton.